Hi, okay, this time we go to our next topic. It is inflation. So we look at the definition of inflation. Inflation is a condition when a continuous increase in the general price level of goods and services in the economy. So we have an opposite situation that we called as deflation. Okay, we have inflation, we also have deflation. Okay, deflation is a condition where a decrease in the general price level of goods and services in the economy. So inflation where the general price level is up, deflation where our general price level is goes down. Okay, so we have 3 degrees of inflation. The lowest one, we call it creeping inflation. It happened when a sustained rise in price is about 2% per year. Okay, the middle one, we call it mild inflation. Okay, a sustained rise in price by about 8% to 10% per year. The highest one, we call it hyperinflation. So it's more than 50%. Okay. So how we measure inflation? We use CPI. Okay. Consumer Price Index. So CPI is an index that measures changes in the average price of consumer goods and services. So it also called the cost of living index. The formula is we subtract CPI this year, meaning CPI current year, subtract with CPI previous year, then we divide it with CPI previous year. We get the amount, then the amount we multiply with 100%. Next, we go to cost or types of inflation. We generally have two causes: demand pull inflation and cost push inflation. We look at demand pull inflation first. Inflation occurs when the aggregate demand exceeds the aggregate supply, meaning too much money chasing too few goods. Okay, it is caused by a rise in AD, which may be due to a rise in consumer demand or an increase in the level of government expenditure or a rise in investment by firms or an increase in demand for the country's export by people in foreign country or a combining of the four. Okay? The second one is cost push inflation. So it shows an increase in general price level associated with an increase in the cost of production. So we have several factors which lead to cost push inflation. The first one is wage push inflation. Okay, wage push inflation occurs due to an increase in the wage level which lead to an increase in the cost of production and the output price. The second is profit push inflation. This occurs when certain producers or monopolists stock up on goods and create an artificial shortage, which will increase the price of these goods, thereby giving them higher profit. And the last one, we call it import push inflation. Okay, so this occurs when the prices of imported raw materials or finished good increase. This may be due to the fluctuation of the foreign exchange rate. So we go to effect of inflation. The first one is distribution of income. So inflation changes the existing pattern of distribution of income and wealth in society, where some groups are relatively better off than others. So we have people who stand to gain from continuous inflations like businessmen, property owners, shareholders, debtors, okay, holders of government bonds, creditors, and etc. Next is saving. Okay, during inflation, the value of fixed deposits, bonds, life insurance policy, and money would depreciate in terms of real income. So, since inflation depreciates the value of fixed deposit, people will save less. Okay, save less and invest in non-financial sectors such as houses and land. Next is increase in production. Okay, so during inflation, the general level of prices rises and producers make higher profit. This will lead producers to increase their level of production and also investment. The last one is balance of trade. So during inflation, many countries face a deficit balance of trade since imports are greater than exports. Okay, so how we measure to control inflation? We have three. Okay, the first one by using fiscal policy. Okay, so government can increase taxes. So an increase in taxes will reduce the disposable income of individuals and their consumption of goods and services. So this in turn will lead to a fall in price. Okay. The next using fiscal policy, government can decrease decrease in government expenditure. So a reduction in government expenditure will directly affect government demand. Okay, the government will cut the salary of all civil servants and postpone its development project to reduce the purchasing power of the public. Okay, the second measure is using monetary policy. So we can use open market operation. So indirectly, the sale of securities by the central bank causes a fall in the price of securities and thus reduce the supply of money. Next, raising the reserve requirement. The central bank would raise the reserve requirement to reduce cash resources in commercial banks and force these commercial banks to restrict their lending activities. Next, raising the discount rate or a bank rate. A rise in the discount rate or bank rate also raises the price of borrowing funds from banks for the business community, and this forces the banking system to re-examine its lending policy. Next is raising the interest rate. The high rate of interest will attract and encourage more people to save, and this will increase the level of savings. Next is selective credit control policy. So this will take the form of issuing directives to commercial banks prohibiting them from lending against certain commodities or reducing the total credit limit granted to the public. Okay. Next, the third measure is direct control measures. The first activity is price control and rationing. Okay, by fixed floor price and ceiling price. If some of the measure fails, rationing is used as a last resort. Rationing is where consumer can purchase limited goods and services using coupons. Okay, rationing is practiced in some countries where the government controls essential goods. The second is anti-hoarding campaign. Okay, this arises when reports are made against producers and consumers who store goods unnecessarily because such storing can cause an artificial shortage and push price up. The last one is compulsory saving. So to control inflation, it is essential to reduce a compulsory saving plan. Introduce this plan, saving plan. So this could be by way of a deduction from the salary of worker that is credited to workers' accounts. Like in Malaysia, we have EPF, or in Malay, we call it KWSP. Okay, so the amount credited into the worker saving account can only be withdrawn upon retirement. Okay, so that's all for this topic. See you again next time. Bye.